Hey guys, welcome to a special episode of one of our podcasts today that we're going to be talking about, as you can see here, our brand Freedom Sun Solar. My name is Don Hill. I'm here with my business partner today, Mr. Brandon Sabag, the two owners of Freedom Sun Solar. How you doing, Brandon?
Doing good, man. Glad to be here in sunny Tampa, Florida.
Yeah, man, this is exciting. We're going to dive in. So many of you might follow us through our Tampa Bay Real Producers podcast, and that we feature we interview our top producing agents, of course, every Friday. We're doing something a little bit different today because Brandon and I started this company earlier, last year, called Freedom Sun Solar, and we'll tell a little bit about the story behind that, I'm sure, here in a second. But we wanted to do a very short podcast, probably 20 minutes or so here, on busting the 7 solar myths from the experience that we've had in talking with customers and even from real estate agents out there. There's been certain things that I've seen as a common thread that has come up, and I just felt like there was some value in being able to address some of these 7 myths and talking through what some of them are. And ultimately, we really just want to be a resource, right, for homeowners, even for real estate agents out there who might want to just like have somebody they can ask questions to or get some help with on certain, solar projects or whatever the case may be. We even work with like roofing partners and other home-based type services that, have customers that are interested in converting to solar. And so I hope that this conversation today will be helpful to be able to dive into what some of these 7 common things are and see if it provides some value and some education for people out there. So, of course, you can follow us as we're live streaming this through our social media platforms right now. It'll also be housed on our YouTube channel here at some point. And you'll be able to reach out to us through our website, which is freedomsunsolar.com. I'll drop our phone numbers and email and all that stuff a little bit later as well. But Brandon, why don't we just start a little bit with why did you even get into solar? How did that whole thing get, why'd you get interested in it? How did we end up partnering up on this project? What do you like about it? What are you excited about?
Yeah, so one of my investment properties, when I bought it, it actually had solar on it. And we turned it into a rooming house. So it's 5 rooms, single family. And, everybody wants their own fridge in their room. Everybody wants, the air conditioned blast in. And so the utility bills were crazy. The utility in Connecticut is absolutely nuts. A lot of people, when they think about solar or when they think about electricity in general, they're looking at the supply, but not always that delivery charge. And so right around COVID, the local utility in Connecticut where I live just skyrocketed. My bill at my personal residence doubled. The profitability of the investment was coming down because it was hundreds of dollars more per month for energy. But I was just thankful that we did have solar there. And I kind of looked into the panels I had and what they produced versus, the technology that was available. And I was like, we can do better. We can actually put together, a better system that will offset 100% of the electric usage that customers are using. So I ended up kind of looking into solar a little bit. I have a marketing business. So through that, I helped a couple other solar companies just generate leads and set appointments and do stuff like that. And then I just reached out to Don, and Don reached out to me, and I heard he was in solar, and we decided to kind of go for it. So
yeah, man. Sounds good. So it's neat that you had the experience really in some ways as a customer first, because
Right.
I actually can relate to that. That's exactly what happened with me too. My story is that we went solar on my own house. Most of you who know me would know we have 5 little kids. We use a lot of power at our house with a swimming pool and the washing machine is constantly running. And the reality is our power bill was over $500 a month with Duke Energy. We live in Land O'Lakes, Florida. And so I just felt like there had to be something that we can do to be able to maybe reduce some of those electric bills, right? And so before I even got into the business, I had somebody through a friend of mine actually recommend a company that they came to our house, and I talked to the guy, and he laid out for me what our options would look like as far as a solar system for the house and how much power that would generate. And so we ended up converting, right, to solar. That was in 2017, I want to say 2017, I think 2018 maybe, on our home. Now, we produce so much power at our house that we weren't able to get a 100% offset on all of our power usage. Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk about that if you're not clear what offset means. But we basically offset about 80% of our power with the solar system that we have at our house, which means I still pay Duke Energy, but it's about 20% of what I would be paying them generally without the system. And then, of course, I have my monthly solar payment. So really, it has saved us money because the monthly solar payment is fixed and locked, and and that was what, 2017. So that was, 7 years ago. My power bill would be even a lot higher today than it would have been, 7 years ago.
And that was the other thing for me too, Don. Like my bills were just fluctuating.
Yeah.
So when you have an investment property, even when you have a personal budget in your house, I mean, you don't know from month to month what your electric bill is going to be. Like most consumers, most of you guys watching this, you get a bill, it could be 200, 300, 350. Like you might sort of know, but you never know exactly. So it's tough to budget. And with solar, you get that locked in payment that never changes.
Yeah, one of the things that I've realized about being in this industry is, and this is a true statement, your power bill is probably the only bill that you pay where you have no idea how much it's going to be every month, and you can never pay it off. Right? If you really think about it, like your mortgage payment, obviously you could pay it off. It's fairly fixed. And maybe even if you have an adjustable mortgage, it might go up or down, of course. But most things that we pay, we can either pay off or we have an idea of what it's going to cost. Right? But your power bill isn't that way. It's like it literally can change every single month. You don't know what it's going to be until you get it. And you can't ever pay it off anyway. So it's just this never-ending rental program.
Forever.
Yeah, you're literally on a never-ending rental program from the power company, which most of these power companies have monopolies in their markets. It's not like the power company ever did a sales presentation to you, came to your house and said, okay, do you want to sign up with Duke Energy? That wasn't really an option, right? When I bought my home anyway, in Land O'Lakes. And so it was, I got thinking about it more, I started to become fascinated with having another option. And so that's really what solar was able to provide for me and for my family. And ultimately, I think Brandon and I, when we decided to create the company, wanted to provide other options and really provide homeowners with choices, right? Because I believe that if you're educated as a homeowner with what your choices are, most smart people will make a decision that's best for their family. But it's really about education and understanding what those options are. And that's what Brandon and I are committed to trying to bring to as many homeowners as possible through Freedom Sun Solar. And so let's talk about some of these myths. But before we do, one quick thing I want to point out. My story with solar was I started in this industry from a recruiting perspective of building a sales team. Those of you who know me know I have a background in recruiting and in building sales teams, starting with my days with Cutco and the knife company and Cutlet and all that fun stuff. And so a buddy of mine who I knew through Cutco approached me about building a sales organization in Florida at the time for his solar company. He was a regional head of the solar company. It was called Smart Energy Today. They were based out of the state of Washington on the West Coast. So I got interested in solar. This was a couple of years after I'd already gone solar in my own house. Long story short, I started developing and recruiting a sales team, and we started, building a sales organization of solar sales reps that were helping homeowners through their personal networks, through other methods of like meeting homeowners, and that was really my initial start in the industry. That company called Smart Energy Today ended up merging with a company that became a company called Lumio. Many of you might know of that brand, which is still around today. And long story short, I was in Lumio for a while, and I just realized that as I got deeper into Lumio, there were certain things that changed with the freedom and flexibility that I had to run my organization the way that I wanted when I was with Smart Energy Today. That kind of went away when Lumio merger took place. It became a little bit more corporate structure, and I think it had to, based on the size of Lumio and where it's heading. I don't have anything negative to say about the people there. But that's really what started this Freedom Sun Solar concept. So I wanted to get that freedom back to build layers and build and support our people the way I felt was best necessary. And so I knew Brandon, by the way, also runs a great call center. Quick plug for his business, which is called Integrity Appointments. He helps companies all over and independent salespeople as well as companies who need appointment setting. That's what he does with his call center. So that was the genesis of how we started talking about starting this, right, with Freedom Sun Solar. And we've gotten it rolling. We've have a couple of different solar consultants now that are in the organization. And if you're somebody who's in solar out there, who's interested in maybe discussing opportunities to work, that's something that we're open to as well. But anyway, let's talk about the busting the 7 myths, right? And we'll try to go through these as quickly as we can. The first one, I think, is some of these might not necessarily be myths, but I think these are just important principles, I guess you would say, about for people to know in the spirit of education, right? So the first one I wrote down was, how much does it cost, right? That's always a common question when it comes to solar. Am I going to have to write a check for this? Am I going to need to invest, a good amount of money in going solar? How long is it going to take me to get a return, right, on that investment? That's a common thing that a lot of homeowners think. So Brandon, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the cost of going solar, I mean, really the question on this one is, what's the cost to not go solar?
Yeah.
Right? Because, these rates are just going up. I mean, 5% a year is kind of like the average that we've seen over the course of the last 20 years with electric costs just going up and up and up. And so the cost for a homeowner to go solar is going to be dependent on the size of the system that you need. But one of the things that's pretty cool about Freedom Sun Solar is the majority of people that we've seen go solar in the last year or so have done it with zero money down. So you don't necessarily have to, save up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 grand to go solar. You can literally go solar without any cost out of pocket. And so a lot of homeowners like that. You're essentially, hopefully lowering your electric costs and trading, you're making your own energy now. So instead of renting your solar, now you're owning it. But you don't have to come out with any money out of pocket in most circumstances. There's a couple different ways to go solar. I don't know if we want to jump into that now.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that too.
Okay.
We'll touch into that. One thing about what we were just talking about there, it literally does cost nothing to go solar. I just want to be clear, right, about what this means. And you might be saying, well, what does that mean? It's basically called the redirection program is how we frame it, right? The redirection program means that every single homeowner that we help go solar is already making some sort of payment to the electric company. We all know that to be a fact, right? So what we are looking at is, how do we redirect the payment that you're already making to the electric company? How do we redirect that towards owning your own power, or even leasing it or renting it in some cases? We'll discuss those different options. But the point is can you redirect that payment, ideally, like Brandon said, a lower amount, right? A lower payment. Can you just redirect that money into owning your own power rather than continually being on this never-ending rental program from the power company? And if we can help you do that with no money out of pocket at all and just lower your cost, then does it really cost you anything to go solar? And the answer is no, right?
Yeah, it's like when you have housing, right? Like as an investor, like we have renters and then we have owners, right? So do you want to rent for the rest of your life? Most people say no. I mean, there are circumstances where people do, but you want to own your own home, and in this case, you can own your own energy.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's really one of the benefits, I would say, of many people who go solar, is that they want to have more control of owning their own energy. Like Brandon said, we own our own cars, we own our own houses, we own our own property. Why not own your energy source, right? As well. And so it allows you to do that. The other thing that is important to know is, depending on the option, and we'll transition secondly into the different ways to go solar, but depending on the option that the homeowner takes to go solar, there is an end date on that payment. So if you have a solar system that's producing 100%, right, of your energy needs, at some point you'll be able to stop paying for your energy needs. Because the reality is that, let's say you do own the system, there will be a certain amount of money that you'll be paying to pay off that system, right, over time. And what happens is that when that is paid off, it's paid off. Like the question is can you ever stop paying your power company? No. But you can stop paying for your solar power in terms of when your system is paid for, it's paid for. And ultimately, that end date really has another little valuation to it, while making those payments, recognizing that you're not seeing any bouncing or acceleration in your payment. You literally have a fixed cost, so you're fighting the effects of inflation. You're battling against all of that and having a fixed payment throughout the term of that agreement. So those are all tied into the cost question that people have. So the second thing we mentioned is, why do people, or different ways to go solar? So there's really, I guess, 4 that you could say different ways, really 3 different ways that people can go solar. Brendan, do you want to address them first so I can add anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously you could pay cash like anything in life, right? You could just buy the system out for whatever the price is. The price is going to be based on how many panels you need. And what offset you're looking for. If there's enough space on the roof, then we can offset 100% of the bill, which is, that's another thing with the spacing on the roof. But, the cool thing about Freedom Sun Solar is we do all that for you. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to come knowing, what your sun production is, all that kind of stuff. We handle all that for you. So cash is an option, probably not super common, but some people say, hey, I'll just pay it off now and not pay for power anymore for the rest of my life. The other option is a loan. It's like a standard, typical loan option where, again, you don't have to put any money down in the loan, but similar to like, financing a car or whatever the case may be, you could just finance it. We have all different, probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 different options on different banks to use and different interest rates and different payments and stuff like that. So that is an option too, doing a loan where you would actually have a loan in your name. And then there's
and that loan option, to clarify, is the option I was referring to, where if you do end up financing a loan, which is honestly how most homeowners go solar in my experience. There are a few that'll just write a check and that'll be done with it, like Brandon said. But the loan option is the most common, where somebody, as long as their credit is decent enough, usually there's a requirement of about a 640 credit score. That can vary a little bit based on the actual the bank that we use, right? But like Brandon said, there's multiple banks that we have at our disposal that we can be able to shop around if needed to figure out what the best option is. But if someone has decent enough credit and they can get qualified, they can go solar with zero money out of pocket, and that loan has a fixed payment, which is not going to accelerate on them, just like a mortgage fixed payment, right? And at someday there will be an end date, depending on, again, the terms of whatever option we would go with. So that's the most common way we found if somebody wants to own the system. And we'll talk about some of the benefits, by the way, of owning the system versus just renting or leasing the system. And those are really the two other ways Brandon can touch on too.
Yeah. So, so with that loan, let's say your payment was $99 or $199 or $299. It's not going to change, like you said, for the life of the loan. When utility rates keep going up, you're going to be there. We also have a lease and a PPA, a power purchase agreement. I've actually found those to be the most common and most popular ways,
especially
that customers,
in this market.
Yeah, in this particular market, it for a lot of customers, it's really the best option. And literally, you're leasing the panels, but they're on your roof. They're not going anywhere. We're not coming back to take them down, right? They're warranted for 25 years, right? And you're not responsible for the maintenance and stuff like that on a lease or a PPA, which is cool. And again, you get that fixed payment, and you are you're basically owning the panels, but you're leasing them. So it's a little confusing there to some people.
Yeah.
But the good thing about that is there's no additional fees. There's no loan in your name. So,
right.
You don't actually
have
no
debt at all, right?
Right. There's no debt on your credit score, and you don't have to worry about any maintenance. You're just paying a payment and handle it, similar to like leasing a car. And I found, in Connecticut and Massachusetts and the New England market, which I'm running for Freedom Sun Solar, we've had customers save 50%. So they've been paying $300, now they're paying $150. We had a guy paying $150, now he's paying $75, and it's like it's offsetting all of his power. And he's just cutting his bill in half. And so it's definitely a popular option with the lease or the power purchase agreement.
Yeah, just to clarify a little bit on these two options. So depending on the market that a homeowner is in, like here in Florida, for example, there is no such thing as what's called a PPA in Florida. PPA stands for power purchase agreement. There is a slight semantic difference between a lease and a PPA. And just to keep it simple, here's the real difference. A PPA means that, and certain states offer PPAs. Some of our New England states do, California does. Many states across the country offer this option called a PPA. And that basically just means that the bank would come in. Sunnova is the most popular bank that we tend to use. There's Sunrun as another, offered there with a solar company that has their own in-house financing. But Sunnova is a pretty big, popular solar bank, right? And so Sunnova would structure the finance agreement in a way where you're basically renting the power that's being produced from the solar system, and that's at a prefixed negotiated rate. Ideally, of course, lower than the rate that you'd be charged from your power company, from Duke Energy or whatever the case may be. And so that's called a PPA. There's an agreed upon rate that you're renting that power from. It's the power that's being produced from the system is what you're renting, if that makes sense. The difference semantically between that and a lease is, on a lease, you're actually renting the solar equipment, right? That's the difference. A lease means that there's a cost to the equipment. You're renting the equipment, which is on your home. That's what we do here in Florida for our homeowners in Florida. Leasing is the option that's available. And like Brandon said, especially with all the interest rate fluctuations that have happened over the last couple of years, really, I say the last year and a half especially, the lease option seems to really be providing the most savings for a lot of the homeowners that are out there. We are seeing as much as 50, even in some cases as high as 75% reductions in their power power usage, their power costs, I mean, by going down the lease route. The other distinction between the two is most lease agreements do not allow you to buy out the solar system during the term of the lease. So you're leasing it for the lifetime of that agreement. And most lease agreements do come with annual escalators that usually they're as low as 1%, sometimes 2%, sometimes even 3%. But again, if you consider the fact that your utility company right now, no matter where you are in the country, if you look at the stats, annually you are paying about 6% more per year just to do nothing, right? And stay with your power company just based on normal rate increases. If you just Google rate increases in my area, you'll probably verify some of this information, right? Here in Florida, by the way, companies like Duke Energy, FPL, TECO, those are the three big utility companies in Florida. You saw reductions over the last 24 months as high as 25% in some of those cases with customers in those markets. 30% increases over the last 24 months. There's and that's not going to happen all the time, but that's unusual to see that high of an increase. But the reality is if you look at the math over the last 40 years, it's about a 5 to 6% annual increase in your utility cost if you do nothing. Right? Just staying with status quo. If you end up going with a lease, you're probably going to have an escalator built into your payment, but it's going to be about half of what it would be on the utility company, if not even less than half, with a 1 or 2 or 3% annual escalator on that lease. On a PPA route, you generally also would have an escalator on the PPA, except the fact that you can generally buy out a PPA agreement at some point in the term. So if you wanted to change your mind and end up owning the full system rather than just renting the power from it, PPAs typically allow that rather than lease agreements usually don't. So there's a distinction there between the two. And I hope that that's helpful, for people that were maybe considering these different ways. So those are really the most common ways that we help people go solar. I want to address one of the things too, which has to do with, I'm going to just call it the government myth. And it ties in sometimes to the lease, because you might be wondering, like, why would your lease payment be so much lower, right? And the biggest reason why we were saying the lease option is the most popular option right now in this market is because you might be familiar with there's a government tax credit program out there. No matter what state that you're in, there's a federal tax credit program that the government has offered. Right now, it's a 30% federal tax credit. So if you're a homeowner out there who has seen a lot of these ads floating around on Facebook or other social media areas promising free solar, hey, the government's going to pay for your solar, the government's going to give you everything for free, blah, 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 blah. These ads, I hate most of them. The reality is they're very misleading. I just want to give you some upfront information here. There is no such thing as free solar. Okay, if somebody is offering you free solar, they're misleading you. What is true is that there is a 30% government-funded tax program. It's a tax credit that no matter where you're at, you can claim when you go solar. Of course, in order to claim that, you have to actually pay federal taxes and have a tax liability that you're responsible for. So if you're a W-2 who generally gets taxes taken out of your paychecks, the reality is you'll be able to get most of that. You'll be able to get that refunded, right? Depending on, of course, what your tax liability was and how much you had withheld throughout that year. So that's where there are people who will get literally a check from the government when they go solar at the end of the year when they file their taxes because they, had, say, $10,000 in taxes that they were withheld from them, but their liability after the 30% credit was only $5,000 in taxes. So they get a $5,000 check, right, from the government. That's how that would work. Myself being a 1099 most of my life, I've always had to pay my taxes. I never had it withheld from my paychecks or anything. So when I went solar, that 30% tax credit basically paid my tax bill for the year, which was great. That's money that I kept in my pocket, and I didn't have to end up paying the government. But when you lease a system, the banks, Sunnova most commonly in our situation, Sunnova is claiming that 30% tax credit for you. And that's why they're giving you a lower lease payment, because they are getting the benefit of that 30% government reduction, that government tax credit, rather than you, the homeowner, claiming that, which you would be able to do if you own the solar system. So that's the difference between the two. Generally, to keep it simple, we usually say if you are paying taxes as a homeowner and you would like to own the solar system to see some of the benefits of the resale value that can bring, we're going to touch on that next. Owning your system might be the better way to go, even if it means that your monthly payment might be a little bit higher than if you choose to lease the system, where you won't own it. You won't be able to claim any of the tax or any of the valuation benefits. You won't build any equity, right, by not owning the system, but your monthly payment would generally be lower by leasing it, because the 30% tax credit is being claimed by Sunnova in that case. I hope that clarifies a few things. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Brandon, but I know I just said a lot.
No, yeah, that was awesome. You covered all the basics. I have to say, out of the 7 myths that we're busting today, this government myth is my favorite one to bust. Being in the marketing world, I see all sorts of Facebook ads. We're running campaigns for over 100 small businesses nationwide right now, and I just get flooded all the time with these government's going to pay for my solar and solar's free. And I think that's why it's super important to work with a company like Freedom Sun Solar, where we're all about integrity in solar, and we really care about the homeowners. I've literally had customers that I've told on the phone or in person in their home, hey, you shouldn't go solar. And sometimes that's the case. Like, we'd love to say and love to see every home in America, own their own power and go solar. But the truth is, it doesn't work for every home. Some homes have too much, shading. Sometimes, the roof space doesn't have enough to offset what the customer would want to. There's a lot of reasons to not go solar too. And so, working with a company like Freedom Sun Solar, that we have your best interest in mind. Don and I, we have other businesses, we have other income. We don't need to sell somebody, a solar system just to pad our pockets. Mm-hmm. We're here to really help homeowners make an impact in the community and in the environment as well.
Yeah, and like I said, both of us have seen the benefits of going solar as a homeowner and a customer first, right? And I think that's kind of a neat way that we approach this business, is we know the benefits of it from a customer's perspective. And then, of course, because we saw the benefits of that, we really believe it can help people, see the same things. But I've just gotten into this industry, and I'm in it long enough now to see how many misconceptions there are out there. And a lot of it is just based in myths and fears and just wrong information, unfortunately. And
whenever you buy something, you want to trust who you're buying it from.
Without a doubt.
And can you really trust somebody that's running ads that say,
So
solar's
be aware.
free
if
or
you
whatever.
see free solar here or there, it's not true. And hopefully now you know why.
Run.
All right. So now, by the way, because we're saying it's not true, the free solar, that does not mean that it still costs you money to go solar. So keep in mind, there's a distinction there, right? The reality is you're already paying your bills. That's what we said earlier about how much it doesn't really cost you anything to go
No money
solar.
out of pocket is the key.
That's the key, right? No doubt. All right, couple more as we wrap up here. So let's talk about this one, holes in the roof, right? This is a common thing that comes up. A customer has a fear of what's going to happen,
roof.
man. I'm going to get an install. I'm going to get my roof's going to be leaky, and now what am I stuck with? So, Brandon, what are your thoughts on the holes in the roof myth?
Man, I've sold solar to people, and they're still talking about this holes in the roof myth, and we haven't even installed yet. The truth is, a bad company, if it's a Chuck with a truck, so to speak, that's coming out to screw in your solar panels, could be an issue. But we work with, as a dealer at Freedom Sun Solar, we have relationships with only the best local and national solar companies. I mean, a couple of the partners we have install in 20, 30 plus states, obviously licensed, insured, all that kind of stuff. And so, the truth is, your roof, in addition to your solar being guaranteed for 25 years, we also guarantee the install and the work as well. So I haven't seen, out of all the installs we've done and all the ones that Don's done previously, we haven't seen any holes in any roofs. But that really comes down to, just like we said before with the government myths, is vetting your solar company and making sure that you're working with a good and reputable organization like Freedom Sun Solar.
Yeah, I think it's really important. If you're just trusting some local mom and pop guy with a hammer to get on your roof and start putting in solar panels because you think it was a cheap bid that he gave you, then maybe you would see some issues, right, when it comes to the install process. But as Brandon said, our partners work in multiple states. They're regional companies, even national companies, doing thousands upon thousands of installs with licensed professionals all over the country. And if we were having situations where like there was roofs with holes in them all the time, that would be a pretty big problem pretty quickly, and it would really limit growth, right, in the organization. So there's a credibility factor there that you really have to be confident in terms of who you're working with and who you're trusting to do the work. But if, like Brandon said, there's also a protection just from the guarantees, right? Our partners offer 25-year guarantees on all of the solar systems, as well as over 10-year protections on the roofs that they put on. So ultimately, and I've had mine now installed for 7 years in my house. Thankfully, we haven't had any issues in terms of any sort of leaks or anything. And in many ways, what people don't realize is that a solar system actually protects your roof. A lot of people don't know that. But I have pictures and stuff I can show customers where here in Florida, we have a decent amount of storms and hurricanes even that come through. There was a big one years ago, Hurricane Michael that went through the Panhandle up not that long ago. And I have some pictures from some neighborhoods that solar was installed in where every home in that community, the roof was just ripped right off because of the hurricane. Yet the only homes that still had their roof intact were the homes, there was like 5 or 6 of them that had solar systems on, because the solar operated as like a blanket that was protecting the roof from being ripped apart, right? And the damage that, the wind and the environment can happen, and even rain.
I love every time I hear you tell that story. And that's one of the other things about Integrity and Solar at Freedom Sun Solar is we actually check your roof before we even sell you the solar system. So we look and see, when was the permit filed? When was your roof last replaced? And if you have an older roof, we usually recommend replacing that roof, especially if it's like over 20 years old. We definitely recommend replacing it before we even bring the install crew out. And one of the cool things about our finance partners is we actually have the option to, locally in Florida, we have some roofing companies that we partner with, even with real producers, that we can help you guys get connected with to replace your roof. But again, we can even do roofs with zero money out of pocket, wrap it right into the solar loan, and make sure that, you have a 25 plus year warranty on your roof and your solar, because you got a new roof. You get some architectural shingles, you got a metal roof, you got something that's going to last and stand the test of time.
Yeah, without a doubt. That's a big thing too, is the age of your roof is one of those factors that we look at in terms of determining whether or not you should go solar at that time. And if you need a new roof before going solar, that 30% federal tax credit that I was talking about earlier could also be claimed on your tax return for the cost of the new roof, as long as the way it's written in the code is, as long as the roof was needed in order for you to go solar, you can claim that 30% on that roof, on that new roof as well, which is nice. A couple more here. I want to just address, what size system do I need? A lot of people don't really know how it works as far as like how they would determine. So when you look into going solar, the first thing that we want to collect from you is your utility bill. Okay, it's important for us to get the bill, because the bill basically tells us what your current energy usage is. And based on your current usage, we can create a system that's designed ideally to get you to a 100% offset with your power, with your bill. Because ultimately our goal is to have you not pay the power company anything other than the small little connection fee that they're going to charge you just to be connected to the grid, even if you're not using their power. That's the way that the power companies work. We can't get rid of that. But as long as you're connected to the grid, you're going to still pay a little something. It's usually like $10, sometimes 20, sometimes less, depending on the power company. But our goal is to get all of our customers to 100% offset, so we can create enough of a size solar system to eliminate all of your energy needs through your solar system. Sometimes that's not possible. Like in my house, we're only at 80% based on the amount of usage we have, and our roof is pretty much maxed out with solar. But that's our goal, right, is to get you to 100%. So that question is addressed pretty simply with your energy needs. And as part of the sit down and your consultation, we want to ask some questions about, where do you think those needs might change, right? Where you have people moving out of your house, in-laws moving into your house. Are you going to put a pool in? Are you going to add a hot tub? Are you going to do anything that's going to change your energy needs? And if so, we should probably adjust accordingly so that we can create a system that's going to match the needs that you have. And that's how we determine what size of a system you would need, so that we can create the accurate proposal from there. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Brandon.
Nah, you covered on that one.
Perfect. Let's keep moving. All right, let's address the concept of the resale value. I've had this come up a lot, especially with real estate agents. There's a concern out there. I know there are, and I love you guys. I love all my real estate agents. Don't get me wrong, but I do know that there are some agents out there that have some thoughts about how solar makes it really, really hard to sell the home. Okay, and I want to address that because there's some things that I think are some myths and misconceptions out there. I'll start with you, and then I'll add a couple thoughts. Do you have anything you want to say about the resale value of a solar system?
You know, I'm going to let you cover this one as Tampa Bay Real Producers founder over here, man. This is your wheelhouse.
All right, so there's really two main things I want to address. One is if you end up owning the solar system, right? Of course, just like anything else, if you invest money into remodeling your kitchen, if you add a pool, right? If you do anything that's going to add value to your home, you would expect that value to be recouped at some point, right? When you sell the home. Solar really is no different. When you add a system that's designed to reduce your energy cost and add value to the home, you would expect that that value would be recouped, right? At some point when you sell the property, which is what happens when you own the solar system. You would simply sell the system as part of the offering with your agent when you end up selling the property. So, in fact, there are studies done on this, by the way, that we show during our sit-downs. There's a really good study that was done by a combination of privately held companies, Zillow. Many of you know Zillow out there. Freddie and Fannie Mac was involved in this study, as well as Berkeley Laboratories out in California. So there was a government agency, an educational entity, and a private company, Zillow, that collaborated on this particular study that I'm referring to. And what they did in this study is they looked at 8 different states, and they looked at over 20,000 sales of homes in these 8 different states all over the country, right? And those of you who know anything about real estate should know that how valuations are determined in real estate is through comps, right? A real estate agent will sit down with you. They're going to give you 4 or 5 sales that are comparable to the sale you have for your home. That's how they're going to tell you what your home might be worth, right? When you sell the property. We're talking real estate language now. So that's how they did this study. They looked at 20,000. And by the way, those of you who are real estate agents might know, if you can get 3 to 5 pretty good comps, you feel pretty confident in your valuation. Would you agree with that? 3 to 5 comps generally is what they're looking for. Sometimes they have to base it on 1 or 2 comps. Sometimes they want to have 10 or more, but the more you can get, the better, right? In terms of valuation of property. With this study, they looked at 20,000 properties. 4,000 of those 20,000 homes were sold with solar systems on it. So do the math. 4 out of 20, it's at like 1 in 5, right? So basically, they looked at the homes that were sold with solar, which was 4,000 homes, compared it to the other 16,000 homes that were similar homes. So these were the comps that were sold without solar in these neighborhoods. It was a one, so basically a 5-1 ratio of comps, correct? And what they found is that the homes that were sold with the solar systems were selling for about 4 times more in value for the investment of the system than the houses that were sold without the solar system. And so being that an average size system is about 10 kilowatts here in Florida anyway, about a 10 kilowatt system, if you do the math, that's about $40,000 in additional value that a homeowner could expect from selling their system with a 10 kilowatt size system than not. I actually have an appraisal report given to me from one of the top agents here in Tampa Bay, by the way, who gave me this appraisal report done locally from a homeowner who recently had their home appraised with solar. And that's exactly the number that was on the appraisal report, was a $40,000 valuation from the appraiser because of the solar system. And I have that report. We show it in all of our appointments. And it's, if anybody wants it, you can reach out to us and we'll get it to you. But that report is there. And so it just shows that, of course, there's value, right, in having the solar system that's generating the money. Now, that, of course, all has to do with owning the solar system. Then the question becomes, what if I lease the solar system, right? What if I'm leasing it, or, I have a PPA agreement? You're not going to really claim equity, of course, on the system because you don't own the system, right? You're still benefiting from the fact the system is there, but if you sell the home, you're not going to be able to sell the home claiming that you own the system. The new homeowner is not going to now own the system. So what are you selling? You're basically selling the lease agreement, right? You're flipping the lease agreement to the new homeowner. With Sunnova, who's our biggest lease partner, the way that works, it's a simple phone call. It's literally as simple as calling the electric company and saying, hey, I've just moved, new homeowners taking over my Duke Energy bill, that we need to switch the bill into that person's name. Duke Energy says, okay. Sometimes that person might have to pay a deposit depending on their credit, right? Duke Energy fills out the information, and now the new electric bill goes to the homeowner. That's exactly how it works with Sunnova, right? With the lease payment. We call up Sunnova. We say, hey, I have a lease, whatever the term is, 15, 20, 25-year lease on my solar system. Brandon Sabag is the new owner of my home. I'm moving. Brandon's going to be moving into the home. He's going to be taking over the lease payments. Sunnova, of course, will possibly check Brandon's credit. Brandon then, of course, would take over the lease payment, and now Brandon is the new person responsible for the lease payment. Some of the questions I get sometimes from agents or from anyone is, well, what if the new buyer doesn't want the solar? Okay, let me ask you this. If a buyer does not want a home with a pool, do they put offers on homes with pools? The answer is usually no, right? If somebody doesn't want the solar system, they're not going to put an offer on your home if you have a solar system. The reality is people who buy houses with solar systems are okay with the solar system, right? Because they see the benefits of the financial side, the upside of having the solar system in the first place. So let's just recognize and call a spade, like what's true. And that is that the solar system is providing the benefit for that reason. And that's exactly what the homeowner is seeing. And any good real estate agent should be able to communicate that, right, to a homeowner to see the benefit of what that solar system can provide for them in terms of the math behind it. One last thing about this. A common myth that I hear is, man, I can't refinance my home. I can't even sell my home because this lease has a lien on my property. I know for a fact some of the real estate agents here in this community have experienced something similar to this with the title companies that they've worked with when they've tried to get a closing done, right? And I want to help you understand the myth here. When someone goes solar or they have a solar system, and especially if it's a lease or a PPA with Sunnova, the lien that's put on the system is not a lien on the property. It is a lien. It's called a UCC1 lien. It's a lien on the equipment of the solar system because the homeowner does not own the solar system. The bank, Sunnova, owns the solar system. It's a UCC1 lien. It is not a lien on the home, to clarify. If a title company, is not aware of that, they might mistakenly just say, oh, there's a lien on the property. But that's not true. What needs to happen is a simple phone call to Sunnova to remove temporarily that lien, that UCC1 lien on the property would open it up very easily for anybody to refinance the property or do whatever they need to do, right, to be able to make sure they could close it. And then, of course, that UCC1 lien would get put back on once the closing was done and the title company got the work done that they needed. Now that UCC1 lien is placed back on to the actual equipment that it is. That's the way that it would work. If you need to get any help with that, if I could help agents out there educate yourselves more on this, feel free to reach out to me. But that's the way that you can work through any sort of hiccups that happened. In my experience, when someone is told that, especially a real estate agent from a title company, it's usually because the title company did not do enough of their homework to figure out that lien could be removed easily with a simple phone call to Sunnova. So that's how that works. All right. Good stuff, Brandon.
I like it. Got to get a good title company. We got a couple good ones here. We got
some great ones, by the way, with real producers, so feel free to talk to them. All right, I only have, let's see, what have we got here? We did roof, we got resale. All right, one more. We're going to end this. The last one I wrote down was net metering, right? This might not necessarily be a myth, but the myth that I've seen promoted out there is that, hey, if you go solar, your utility company is going to start paying you back all the money. They're going to start cutting you checks, left and right, and paying you to go solar. That's not true necessarily. But there is a program called net metering. Brandon, do you want to explain what it is? Then I can throw anything else in.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, net metering in a lot of in Eversource that we have up in Connecticut and Massachusetts as well, there's a 1-to-1 net metering. So essentially, the sun is out. It's shining right now in beautiful Tampa, Florida, and in Connecticut. And when that's happening, you're producing power. And you're using, your solar panels are creating the power, and you're using that energy. If you actually create more energy than you need, you're building a credit with Eversource or with Duke Energy, here in Florida or TECO, whatever it is. So you're building that credit. And then once the sun is no longer shining, right? Obviously, unless you have some type of battery backup, you're in a position where you need solar, you need power, right? And so you're actually buying it from the utility. So it's kind of like a 1-for-1. You're buying it from them, you're using your own, and you're selling some of it back to them as well. And so the cool thing about this is, a lot of companies like Eversource in Connecticut, they, at the end of the year, they kind of do the math on it. So in Connecticut, in New England, you're looking at like June, July, August, even this time, April, May, there's a lot of sun, there's a lot of production. So your system might actually produce more than 100% in these seasons, but then you get to like the dark winter and stuff, and you're not producing 100%. So you'll actually have a credit from the power company that you can then apply to the times when you're not making enough power to actually run your home.
Yeah, very well put. The only thing, to simplify the process of what net metering means, I usually use the analogy of rollover minutes on a cell phone, right? You remember how rollover minutes used to work when you had your cell phone plan? If you didn't use all your minutes, you can roll over the credits. That's really how net metering works as well. If you simply don't use all of the, if you overproduce, I should say, like Brandon just mentioned, where 1 month it's extremely sunny and you overproduce that month and you don't use all the energy that the solar system has generated, one of the things you should recognize is when you overproduce, you're operating as your own energy system, your own energy plant, right, at your home. So when you overproduce that energy, you're actually benefiting Duke Energy or whoever your utility provider is, because they're taking that excess energy from that you're putting back into the grid and they're turning around and reselling it to your neighbors. Okay. So as you're overproducing, they will give you credits on that overproduction that could be rolled over to your next bill. Usually most power companies, now this is going to be it varies from power company to power company. There are some power companies, and ideally what we want to work with are power companies that still offer a 1-to-1 credit, right? Which simply means, every time that you overproduce, you're going to get the same value for that production as you would buying the power from the power company. That's a 1-to-1 credit. Our goal is to still work with as many of those power companies as we can. Thankfully, the big ones here in Florida still offer that. But let's be honest, do you think power companies like losing money? We all know the answer to that. And that's why you'll see in some states like California, as an example, where power companies have very powerful lobbyists in Washington. They do not like 1-to-1 credits of net metering. And the more and more customers who get onto solar, the reality is they recognize that they're losing more and more money as a result of that. So they start passing new bills to try to limit and phase out that 1-to-1 net metering credit. And that's why in California right now, it's not really available anymore. It's like a 3-to-1 credit or a third buyback, or it just varies by different utilities as to what they're willing to credit you back, because they don't want to keep, paying out to their customers. This is why it's important for anyone who's considering solar to try to get locked in at the best net metering agreement that you can. Because if you can get locked in at a 1-to-1 net metering agreement, even if the government in your state, and by the way, here in Florida, not that long ago, the state legislature here in Florida, just last year, passed a bill to try to phase out 1-to-1 net metering here in Florida. Thankfully, with the help of my old company, Lumio was who I was with at the time, they were working with the governor here, Governor DeSantis in the state of Florida, to try to get that bill squashed, and DeSantis actually vetoed that bill. So that bill never got passed, even though it was passed through the Republican legislature here in Florida. And thankfully, we still have 1-to-1 net metering credits here. But that's not the case in California and in many other markets.
As you were just saying, I always say, you'll see some of our Freedom Sun Solar ads. The time for solar is now.
Yeah, without a doubt.
We don't know what they're going to do in the future. We can't rely on, the government and the power companies to let us keep doing this. And, it's like anything in life. Right now is one of the best times, if not the best time I've ever seen to go solar. And it's because of that. It's because what we saw happen in California, if that could happen in California, it could happen in Florida. It could happen in New England. It will happen.
It's a fact that these utility companies are not going to allow, and they have very powerful lobbyists in Washington, right? So they're not going to allow themselves to keep bleeding customers and losing money. They will keep doing whatever they need to do to get another administration in there. They're going to try again. You can sure they will, in order to phase out net metering. And they usually phase it out over time, right? They set I think the bill here was supposed to be over 5 years or whatever, that they phase that out. But that's the goal, is to grandfather it in. Because if you're grandfathered into a 1-to-1 net metering credit, you're grandfathered in most cases for 20 to 25 years, which is a pretty good amount of time to be able to take advantage of those benefits. So these were the 7. I hope that this was helpful, right? We spent more time on it than we had thought, but this video I'm sure will be chopped up a million times, and we'll use it for other things and try to educate as many homeowners as we possibly can. But we just spent some time going through busting, hopefully, the 7 common myths, I would say, the 7 solar myths that are out there. If you're a real estate agent, if you're a roofing company, if you're somebody who would love to talk more about any of these things, or you're coming into some struggles, or you're bumping into a situation where you're not sure how to handle it, feel free to reach out to us. We would love to be a resource. We'd love to be a service. You can reach us at info@freedomsunsolar.com. Go ahead and shoot us an email there anytime you want, info@freedomsunsolar.com. You can also reach us at our phone number is 813-601-2831, 813-601-2831. We'll throw that up on our post here and up on our website. Our website is freedomsunsolar.com. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on YouTube. We have the Freedom Sun Solar YouTube channel where this will be housed as well. And we just hope that this was helpful from an educational standpoint. So if you're a homeowner who's hopefully learned something from watching this, and you're interested in talking about how to go solar, let us help you. We'd love to at least put a proposal together and show you what your options are. And as Brandon said, our goal is to give you options. We believe in the power of choice, right? We are not socialists. We're not communists. We're about free choice here, right? We believe in free choices.
And the design is free too. So
yes,
we'll actually
Freedom Sun Solar is for that reason, right? We want you as a homeowner to feel like you have a choice. And you really do have a choice when it comes to your power needs. And we hope that Freedom Sun Solar can help serve some of those needs for you guys as you, your money could be well spent elsewhere. I'd rather have you spending your money on your kids and your family than on fattening the pockets of utility companies. So we'll see you guys in the future. I hope this was helpful. Thank you for a few minutes. We'll talk to you later.